Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving right into the fascinating, highly structured science behind growing one of the world's most mysterious and honestly, most valuable fungi right inside your own home. We're talking about Cordyceps militaris. It's an organism that sounds straight out of a science fiction novel, but it's currently sparking an absolute revolution in the world of microfarming.
To really understand the hype here, we have to talk about the staggering market value. Let's put this into perspective. Cordyceps can sell for upwards of 1 lakh rupees per kilogram. That is roughly over $1,000 for just a couple of pounds. It immediately highlights exactly why this extremely rare organism is so heavily sought after. It's not just an agricultural curiosity. The medical community, alternative health practitioners, and biohackers are all intensely interested in it. So what exactly is this stuff? Well, Cordyceps militaris is a high-value medicinal fungus. Historically, it's been consumed to boost energy, stamina, and lung capacity, giving you a lift without that awful crash you usually get from caffeine. But today, modern science is taking a much closer look. It's actively being researched for its potent active compounds, primarily one known as cordycepin, and studies are actually suggesting it might have potential cancer-inhibiting and even HIV-inhibiting properties. Now, we are simply explaining the source material here, not making any medical endorsements, but it's undeniable that these massive health claims are exactly what's driving the global demand.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The million-dollar mushroom. 2. The micro-farm environment. 3. Step 1. Tissue culture. 4. Step 2. Liquid spawn. 5. Step 3. The substrate. And 6. Incubation and harvest. Let's jump in. Section 1. The million-dollar mushroom, origins and reality.
In the wild, this fungus, sometimes called Himalayan Viagra, has a pretty wild, almost gruesome origin story. It naturally grows out of the bodies of insect larvae at incredibly high altitudes. Because of this, it's extremely rare and harvesting it is highly restricted to protect that fragile mountain ecosystem. But contrast that with modern indoor cultivation. Today, it's being grown on a surprisingly simple base of brown rice and nutrient broth. It's highly scalable, it requires a hyper-sterile environment, and get this, the lab-grown varieties often yield even higher concentrations of those active medicinal compounds than their wild counterparts.
Section 2. The microfarm environment. Mimicking the mountains. You can't just toss these in a dark closet and cross your fingers. The crucial point here is absolute precision. To successfully cultivate this super delicate organism inside, say, a shipping container or a spare bedroom, farmers have to use automated sensors to lock in a strict temperature of 20 to 21 degrees Celsius. Humidity? That has to hover precisely between 65 and 70%. The fungi also need exactly 12 to 14 hours of daily light to fruit properly. And honestly, perhaps most importantly, the air has to be incredibly clean. They use HEPA filtration and laminar flow hoods to provide a constant, smooth stream of filtered air. This constantly cycles out carbon dioxide and completely prevents contamination. You know what's really amazing, though? It's the who behind all of this. Take self-taught mycologist William Padilla Brown, who perfectly points out, I think it's important to encourage public acts of citizen science. The more people doing it, the more we uncover. By looking at the perspectives of self-taught farmers, we're seeing how everyday people are basically democratizing this complex, high-value agricultural venture using pretty basic technology. You literally don't need a multi-million-dollar university lab to participate in this anymore. Section 3. Step 1. Tissue culture.
So, let's look at the high-level roadmap of the mushroom's life cycle. We can map its journey across 3 very distinct chronological phases. First up, isolating the genetics in a sterile petri dish using potato dextrose agar. Second, expanding that isolated culture into a highly nutritious liquid spawn. And third, introducing it to a solid substrate where it can finally fruit. Now, you might be wondering, why on earth are these micro-farmers dressed like surgeons? They're wearing masks, head caps, gloves, and they're working exclusively in front of those laminar airflow hoods. Well, the answer is pretty simple. Fungi absolutely love competition. The exact nutrients we use to grow cordyceps happen to be the absolute favorite food of everyday molds and bacteria. Literally, if even a single microscopic spore from your breath lands on that culture, your entire crop is totally ruined. To get that zero contamination baseline, farmers bring in an autoclave. Think of it as a heavy-duty, high-tech pressure cooker. They run their tools, jars, and the agar mixture, which, by the way, is a gel made of potato starch, glucose, and magnesium sulfate, at exactly 121 degrees Celsius and 15 psi for 30 to 45 minutes.
That achieves absolute sterility. Nothing survives that environment. Only then can they safely place a tiny piece of cordyceps tissue onto the agar to kick off the growth process.
Section 4, Step 2, Liquid Spawn.
Remember, out in the wild, this fungus is eating a highly nutritious insect. We have to essentially recreate that insect's nutritional profile using plant-based ingredients indoors. And the way they do it is brilliant. They mix mineral or coconut water with potato or tapioca starch, 30 grams of glucose for energy, 5 grams of peptone for protein, 5 grams of yeast extract, and a half gram of magnesium sulfate. This intensely mineral-rich broth is poured into conical flasks, acting as the ultimate liquid diet for the mycelium to feast on.
Once that tissue culture is dropped into those half-filled flasks, they go straight onto a rotary shaker. This machine just constantly agitates the liquid at around 100 to 120 revolutions per minute for 5 to 7 days straight. Why? Because that constant shaking stops the fungus from just floating lazily on top. It forces it to grow throughout the entire liquid, creating millions of crucial white fungal fibers. And just like that, you've created your liquid spawn.
Section 5, Step 3, the substrate. The substrate matrix itself is actually surprisingly simple, but, you guessed it, requires exact measurements. Farmers use 20 to 28 grams of standard brown rice. That rice acts as the solid, physical matrix for the mushroom to live on. They combine that rice with 40 to 46 milliliters of that precise nutrient broth we were just talking about. Then, this mixture is placed into a glass jar. They specifically use glass over plastic because it can safely survive the intense heat of that autoclave sterilization process. Okay, so once those rice jars are perfectly sterilized and cooled down, it's time for the magic. Still under the strict protection of the laminar flow hood, farmers use a sterile syringe to carefully inject anywhere from 1 to 7 milliliters of the liquid spawn directly into the rice jars. It's a hugely delicate balancing act. Add too much liquid and the jar turns into a soggy bacterial swamp. Add too little and the fungus simply won't have the moisture it needs to grow.
Section 6, Incubation and Harvest. Watching this growth cycle is honestly a dramatic visual transformation. For the first 1 to 15 days, the jars are locked away in total darkness. The brown rice becomes completely engulfed in this thick, snow-like white fuzz. That's the mycelium rapidly colonizing its food source. Then, after about 2 weeks, the jars are finally exposed to light. This light acts as a trigger for the fungus to fruit. Over the next 2 to 3 months, you'll see these incredibly vibrant, bright orange, finger-like structures growing upwards, desperately reaching toward the light. But hey, it's definitely not always a guaranteed success. We have to talk about crop failure, because the dangers are very real. If your temperatures rise even just a few degrees above that ideal 21 Celsius mark, you are inviting in devastating contaminants. The most common culprit is a specific mold called Calcarysterium cordycecola. It shows up as this destructive white fuzz growing literally right over your beautiful orange fungi. And then there are mites, which can infiltrate the jars and straight up eat your profits. Precision climate control is your only real defense. When everything does go right, how do you actually know it's ready to harvest? Interestingly, the distinct visual cue for peak maturity isn't just about how tall it gets, it's about texture. You're looking for little bumps, called parathesium, starting to form right on the tips of those orange fingers, or the stroma. That is your green light. It means the active compounds are at their absolute peak. Once harvested, farmers can carefully dehydrate them, store them in ethanol, or process them into extracts and capsules for the market. Which really brings us to a massive realization. We are watching everyday citizen scientists take an incredibly rare million-dollar mushroom out of the remote Himalayas, map its biological needs perfectly, and successfully cultivate it in shipping containers and spare bedrooms. It completely democratizes what was once an impossibly exclusive resource. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. If everyday people can master this level of hyper-sterile biological engineering right at home, how might this micro-farming revolution permanently alter the future landscape of agriculture and alternative health? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep experimenting, and we'll see you next time.